I am your humble host, Niko House. If you are just now tuning in, got a couple of announcements. So I did a poll to see, what time worked best for everybody. And we might play with this a little bit. But a lot of between Twitter and YouTube, almost exactly 50% of people wanted it at 5 or later, 5 p.m. Eastern or later. And the others wanted it 12 p.m. or sooner. So for now, I decided to do a happy medium where we'll do 12 p.m. live every weekday for now. Once again, if I feel like that needs to be adjusted, then it will be adjusted. But for now, we'll do 12 p.m. and see how people like it and, take it from there. We'll be generally doing live streams for breaking news and other stuff like that still. But I just wanted a consistent time so that people knew where to be at to catch us live, because I get a lot of people who say they miss our live streams and they want to be able to catch us. So decided to try to do this live stream every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard. Also, if you have not yet, make sure you go subscribe to us on Rockfin. Go to rockfin.com, ROKFIN.com. It's a great platform. It's cryptocurrency, open source. It's fantastic for creators. I'm a part of it. The Convo Couch is a part of it. Ron Placone's a part of it. Graham L was a part of it. Jimmy Dore's thinking about coming on. There are a lot of people that are probably going to end up on Rockfin. It's a combination of YouTube and Netflix. If you do want premium content from myself, Convo Couch, Ron Placone, Graham Elwood, or anybody else, they have comedians on there. They have MMA fighters training people how to fight. If you want premium content for the entire website, all you have to do is endorse one person for $9.99 a month. And you get access to all the premium content, movies, behind the scenes stuff from everybody on the platform. It's creator centered. So it's made to make sure that the creator can succeed rather than, YouTube, which seems to be based on whether or not the advertiser can make money. And it's not even really about the advertiser making money. They just lie and say that because it's really about YouTube making money. So if you have not yet, you can go to rockfin.com and subscribe to us there. Like I said, not only, you can find me there, you can find Ron Placone there, the Convo Couch is there, Graham Elwood is there, and there are a lot of other people about to come on as well. The platform is growing pretty quickly. And like I said, it is open source. So I'm missing something. Let me check my notes. Oh yeah, qbounty.com. Say if you didn't get to catch me live, but you had a question you wanted me to answer, or maybe you work at 12 p.m. Eastern and you're like, damn, I really want him to answer this question. To get your question answered during the next live stream, or even have a video dedicated to your question, go to qbounty.com. It's QBOUNTI.com. And you can actually, it's like a super chat setup, but you don't have to be in the live stream to do it, which is dope. We did a few here. A lot of people have liked them. I actually have a few I have to answer still. I haven't gotten to, but I'm excited about it. And then Rockfin, I'll put that in the description as well. Rockfin.com. Other than that, man, yeah, just hit that like button, hit that share button, and we're going to go ahead and get the party started. Yeah. All right, so first up is this Warren debacle, which at a certain point, you just got to acknowledge that this is a pattern of behavior. That you have to acknowledge that this is intentional, because Warren just cannot stop lying. She just can't. It's at this point, it's just a reflex for her. She's just like, you know what? I could tell the truth here, and it really wouldn't hurt me. It might help me, but instead, I think I'll just lie instead, because I want a couple of brownie points, and I like people patting me on the back and feeling sorry for me, which seems to be Warren's whole career. It's just manufactured oppression that she's never really experienced. I'm not saying she's never experienced any oppression as a woman. That's the bare minimum. She's a white woman from Oklahoma, okay? She has seemed to do pretty damn well for herself, and where she's had opportunities given to her, she's taken advantage of those opportunities. But for whatever reason, still, she kind of puts off this image that she's like oppressed. Like she just yearns to be oppressed. And I don't get it. But hey, not my problem. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to check out this new lie that Elizabeth Warren is pushing now.
Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren has been caught making things up again about her past, this time by the enterprising Tommy Christopher over at Mediaite. Warren frequently makes reference on the campaign trail and in public to an alleged incident where she was dismissed as a teacher for being visibly pregnant. Let's take a listen.
So my first teaching position was as a special needs teacher. There we go. I loved that job. But by the end of the first school year, I was quite visibly pregnant, and the principal didn't invite me back for the next school year.
The problem, as with many things about Elizabeth Warren, is that is a version of events meant to tug at the heartstrings is not what she was saying back in 2007. During an interview with then For Conversations with History, Warren says she decided to abandon her calling as a teacher because she lacked the proper credentials to qualify for a permanent position. Listen in her own words.
It was in a public school system, but I worked with the children with disabilities. And I did that for a year. And then that summer, I actually didn't have the education courses, so I was on an emergency certificate, it was called. And I went back to graduate school and took a couple of courses in education and said, I don't think this is going to work out for me.
There it is, plain as day. Some of Warren's defenders said it wasn't technically a lie because pregnancy may still have been one of the reasons she was dismissed. It's hard to find credulity in that idea, however, given that she said very clearly she left of her own accord and wasn't pressured out. Look, I know...
Yeah. Okay, so what we're going to do is Mediaite. So let's check out the article that Sager was referring to. Not all of it, but I want to read the important part. So Warren said that she was fired. That wasn't really the case, as you heard from her own words. And the article says that the version of the video that you heard was closer to the truth in a lawyerly technical sense, but according to Elizabeth Warren, the 2000 law professor, that is still a lie, her claiming that she was fired because of her pregnancy. Warren is absolutely right that women in the early 70s were subjected to pregnancy discrimination, which was legal then, and persists now even, that laws in practice. It persists now even with laws in place. But in a March 8th, 2007 interview with Harry Chrysler for Conversations with History, Warren made it clear that such discrimination had nothing to do with laws of that particular teaching job. Warren also told Chrysler how she had earned a full scholarship to George Washington University at 16 and graduated with a degree in speech pathology and audiology, and didn't mention the commuter college that has become another pillar in her bio. I did not know that she went to George Washington at 16. She then explained that she left her public school job after 1 year because she lacked the educational credentials to qualify for a permanent position, and that she decided on her own to abandon the calling. And there you have it, folks. Elizabeth Warren caught lying again in video and on paper. And I guess it makes sense that she studied speech pathology, considering that she's clearly a pathological liar. lying. I don't like. It's getting to the so like one of the main reasons, one of the main criticisms of Trump is the fact that he is a pathological liar. And I don't give a damn how you feel about Trump. This is an undeniable fact. If Trump can lie and get away with it to benefit himself, he absolutely will. He will. There's no question about that. He's done it. He's not worth as much money as he's claimed to be in the past. Like, he lied about Venezuela. He's lied about Syria, then kind of told the truth about Syria, then lied about Syria again. He lied about Iran several times. Like, the man's a liar. Now, with that being said, the Democrats use that fact as one of the pillars as why he cannot be trusted and why he should be ousted from the White House and why Democrats should vote for a Democrat. Freudian slip. A Democrat rather than Trump. Here's the problem with that. When you're putting forth someone like Elizabeth Warren, who herself has proven to be a pathological liar, what contrast exactly are you putting like up against Trump? Like, what exactly is the difference between Warren being a pathological liar and Trump being a pathological liar? What's the difference? Isn't one of the main things that people talk about with Trump not only what he lies about right now, but also how he lies about a lot of his past? Like, he lies about some of his struggle. He lies about how he treated certain people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, he tries to victimize himself a lot in an effort, in a self-aggrandizing effort. Like, oh, look at all the things that I've conquered to get here. Small loan from my billionaire father that I turned into $2 million. No help from my billionaire father, whose property I largely inherited. But this isn't all that different from Warren. Warren may not have come from a billionaire family, but her upbringing was not as difficult as she's portrayed it to be. She was not marginalized as an indigenous American like she claimed to be. She actually benefited largely because she didn't have to deal with any of the plight of the indigenous community, and yet she has tangibly benefited from it. Harvard literally was very clear. They were very, she was Native American. We needed Native Americans to fill our quota, and she was also a woman. Bada bing, bada boom. So, like, once again, what exactly is the contrast here? The reason I'm asking this is because I'm an independent, right? I'm just a YouTuber, I may not be the smartest guy in the room, but I at least know how to use a search engine. What I mean to say is I'm not the only person that can do opposition research. And when we're talking about the general election and a Republican Party who utterly despises Warren and a president, Trump, who has Warren's number on just about every single issue, how hard will it be for Trump to get opposition research on Warren? Because right now, you're really seeing the surface being scratched, I imagine, on a lot of the lies that Warren has told. So when Warren becomes the only thing standing in the way of Donald Trump's second term, but also the second term or the re-election of many legislators, governors, representatives across the nation, how long do you think it will take the GOP to figure out, you know what? She's basically lied on everything and about everything. We don't have to. Trump has already sold himself to his base, right? He's managing the clock right now. He doesn't need to put up 50 more points. He's already put up 45. And the Democrats put up maybe 13. 13, 14 points. All he has to do is run the clock down. Maybe score a couple of field goals. However, the Democrats should be throwing Hail Marys, but instead they keep turning the damn ball over and getting scored on. So all the GOP has to do is expose the fact that Warren, I thought that the whole thing was Warren's honest, or the Democrats are honest and Trump's a liar. But why'd you put up a liar against a liar and say that you should vote for this liar instead of this liar just because they have the D by your name? That's all you have to do. And then Warren becomes an easy target. And not only do you lose the White House again, but you may also lose the legislature because the Democrats will of course, back Warren 100%. So you might even lose the legislature just because people are like, damn, this woman is lying straight to people's faces, and lies that are actually easier to catch. Some of these lies have been easier to catch than Hillary's lies. Because Hillary's, you got to do a lot of mapping. You got to pull out the whiteboard and start drawing a bunch of stuff together and, figuring out the lies through some of the, you gotta like siphon through the misdirection that Hillary has become known for. But with Warren, it's like, I said this. Well, but you said this like 2 years ago. Well, yeah, but I'm a fighter, so ignore that. Yeah, I just changed my position. Or she won't even acknowledge it. Like with the Native American thing. She got exposed, and when she was approached by a Cherokee woman, she said, I know who I am, and I know who my family is. Instead of just apologizing. So at best, it is a bad strategy to run Elizabeth Warren. At best, it's a bad strategy. At worst, it shows just how disingenuous, once again, the Democrats are. And if you're one of those people pushing Warren, like, I hate using this example because I don't like Obama. I really do not like him as a leader. He was, in my opinion, an abysmal failure. And he betrayed everything that he ran on. But let me be very clear about something. If Obama was caught in the middle of his election, straight up lying about his past, like indisputable lies, he would have gotten torched. The tropes would have been nonstop. If maybe Obama pretended his father was Kenyan and he really wasn't for whatever reason, that would be problematic, don't you think? Like if he was trying to run on that identity and it turned out he really wasn't Kenyan, that would be a problem. The Democrats would have torched him for that. And they would have gotten away with it too. Because he's a black guy, being honest with you. Just like Biden has gotten away with a lot because he's a white dude. If Obama performed like Biden is doing now, he would have gotten eaten alive by his own party. So why is it that people like Warren are so widely protected? And it's important to understand that a lot of the time, even if you are a preferred candidate of the establishment, preferred in comparison to the outsiders, if you are a person of color, if you are not a white woman or old white guy, you will not be protected in this. They'll protect you they'll protect you as far as your use goes. Once you are no longer useful, you will be thrown out with the bathwater. That's how they do. You're not in the club. If you're a Kamala, like you think you're in the club. You think you're in the club. Just like Obama probably thought he was in the club. But the Democrats love him now, but they threw him under the bus several times during his administration. You think you're part of the club until you finally realize that you're not. Like, you're not. Doing what they say, doing what they want is not enough. Sometimes, sometimes it's just, hey, we don't know you like that. And that's what it comes down to. Look at how, like, just as a sporting example, the way that NFL coaches are treated. Whereas, like, the Cowboys coach, for example, has had an abysmal record as far as the Cowboy standards are concerned. His name is Jason Garrett. Yet Jerry Jones sees him like a son, so he keeps him around. Even though any other team, he would have been fired. Well, he should have been. Usually after 4 or 5 years of either mediocrity or trash, you're fired. But if you're a black coach in the NFL, you get maybe 1.5 losing seasons. They don't care about whether or not you're, what the injuries look like, whatever. They don't care if the GM brought bad talent. They're like, do what we hired you to do. It's all business. Don't worry about it. But if you're like a quote unquote Jason Garrett for the Cowboys, who's really good friends with Jerry Jones, I'm using the Cowboys as an example because I know a lot of people have been tuning in about that George Bush nonsense with Ellen DeGeneres. So, but if you're the Cowboys with Jerry Jones, and the owner sees you as a son, is there a good chance that a younger black coach would be embraced in the same way that Jerry Jones, the owner of the Cowboys, would embrace his coach? No. So sometimes it's just as simple as that. It's just as simple as that. Some people are protected by the patriarchy. Others are not. Others are not. So anybody have any? I didn't miss any super chats, did I? Hope I did not. Before we move on to the next topic. I don't think I did. All right, good stuff, good stuff. Okay, so on to the next topic, a little bit more positive. Did you all know that Bernie Sanders just introduced a plan to get big money out of politics? Now, before we actually get into the plan, I actually want to take a look at his initial plan to do this. I don't know if you all knew this, but Bernie Sanders actually introduced a resolution, a joint resolution actually, with the House, or with the Senate and the House in 2012. It was good. However, there were a lot of shortcomings. And I don't know if you all are familiar with the Move to Amend movement, the nonprofit organization that is trying to get an amendment introduced in the House and the Senate to permanently get big money out of politics. They did a critical article about Bernie in 2012. And what I want to do, if you all will allow it, is to look at that article, look at some of the critiques in that article, and see if his new plan addresses some of the critiques in this 2012 article with his old plan. So let's check it out. So the title of the article is Why We Need Bernie Sanders to Change His Amendment Proposal. It was written on April 15, 2012 by Niko Gaudiano. So the article says, Sanders' proposal on corporate personhood faces early challenges. Senator Bernie Sanders is among congressional lawmakers leading the call for a constitutional amendment to end corporate spending in elections. But his ideas on corporate personhood, the treatment of corporations as people under the law, are drawing criticism from some amendment advocates. They say his approach unfairly favors unions and nonprofit corporations and might clash with the wishes of some Vermonters. I know that seems counterintuitive to those who are pro-labor or pro-union, but there's a method to the madness, and it actually discusses it here. The Vermont Independence Amendment Resolution and an identical House resolution co-sponsored by Representative Peter Welch, Democrat from Vermont, aims to overturn the Supreme Court's controversial 2010 ruling in Citizens United versus the Federal Elections Commission that gave corporations and unions the same First Amendment rights as people to spend unlimited amounts of money on campaign ads. And introduced in December, the resolution introduced in December, the resolution would strip for-profit corporations and corporate interest groups of claims to constitutional rights, ban them from spending money in elections, and reaffirm that Congress and the states can regulate and limit all campaign spending. This is a quote from Bernie regarding that resolution. The goal right now is to make sure that Wall Street and coal companies and oil companies and other for-profit corporations cannot go into their billion-dollar treasuries, take that money out, and spend as much as they want, Sanders said. But when it comes to the constitutional rights of certain nonprofit corporations, including political action committees and unions, Sanders' resolution is silent. Political action committees, for those of you who are not familiar, is what you would call a political PAC or a super PAC. That surprised some people in Vermont, where 65 cities and towns have passed resolutions calling for a constitutional amendment specifying that corporations aren't people, said the state senator Virginia Lyons, a leader in the movement. Even before town meetings in March, she said some Vermonters said they would oppose excluding corporations under such an amendment. Oh, any corporation, excuse me. Some Vermonters said that they would oppose excluding any corporations. So that includes nonprofits. Specifically, by the way, 501c4s. Even before town meetings she and others argue that under Sanders' proposal, political action committees for unions could do more to influence elections than other PACs. People want a pretty clean separation from what we've had, said Lyons, a Democrat. We don't want to show favoritism for one side or another. It's really about leveling the playing field. So there you have it. So that's a pretty even-handed article about, what Bernie has done in the past. Basically saying the same thing that I said. His 2012 bill was good. Could have been better. It's very rare to see someone kind of outflank Bernie from the left on his key issues. And so when you hear legitimate criticism, especially coming from a senator from Vermont who was an advocate of the movement on the ground, who is also a Democrat, I think it's important to try and observe their point and see if they're making a legitimate one. And so let's read and see if Bernie's plan addresses any, if not all, of the criticisms that were lodged in that article for Move to Amend. So let's check it out. All right. His plan's called Getting Corporate Money Out of Politics. Pretty cut and dry. The details of the plan. End corruption of the National Party conventions. In 2016, 17 donors gave 3/4 of the Democratic National Convention funding, with large corporations like Bank of America, Pecco Energy, Comcast, and Facebook, each donating over $1 million. Of course, Facebook donated over $1 million. Their lobbyists were everywhere and filled the VIP suites. Of course, this type of corporate sponsorship is a corrupting influence and must end if politicians are going to represent the American people. Let me just say, for those who think that Bernie, or who thought that Bernie was not affected by the outcome or the clear corruption that was taking place at the Democratic National Convention in 2016, I feel like this is kind of an ode to how pissed he really was, despite the fact that he could not display how pissed he was because he knew that he would be trying to run again in 2020. I think that he knows, I've said for quite some time, I'm like, he realized too late that Hillary had been running since 2007, 2008, and like she's been running for 2016, or she had been running for 2016 since 2011, 2012, basically. She had been running. She had been putting the pieces together so that basically anyone who ran against her would have absolutely no chance of beating her. So the plan goes on to say, as a Democratic nominee, Bernie will ban corporate contributions to the Democratic Party convention and all related committees. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. And apparently when you become the president, you do technically become the head of the Democratic Party. So that's a pretty big deal. I don't think that it's quite done the same on the Republican side. But I know that as far as the Democrats are concerned, they consider the president to be the leader of the Democratic Party. As president, Bernie will update and strengthen the Federal Elections Campaign Act to return to a system of mandatory public funding for national party conventions. It's good stuff. It's good stuff. So he also says, end corruption of the presidential inaugurations. Corporate donors spend tremendous amounts of money on inaugural events. In 2016, Trump's inaugural donors included AT&T, Bank of America, Boeing, ExxonMobil, General Motors, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, and many more. Funny enough, a lot of those companies also had Nazi subsidiaries and were also involved in corrupting the economy of Cuba, and also were involved in corrupting the economy of South Africa. And I mean, the list does go on, but let's continue. Private prisons also shelled out hundreds of thousands of dollars for Trump's inauguration. And this is nothing new. Corporate donors in 2013 included Microsoft, Boeing, Chevron, Genentech, and numerous federal contractors. Many of these corporations have federal contracts and businesses that come before Congress. It is absolutely absurd that these entities are allowed to spend enormous sums of money in an attempt to garner the favor of the president and the vice president of the United States. As president, Bernie says he will ban all corporate donations for inaugural events and cap individual donations to $500. That seems reasonable. Public election reform. Now, this is where it gets good. Over the years, the Supreme Court has made numerous decisions that increase the influence of money in politics. We must overturn these disastrous decisions and ensure that the Supreme Court justices are held to a high standard of honorable conduct in the future. In 2016, the fundraising committee for DNC was led by an insurance executive and a Comcast executive. Currently, some committee chairs work as CEOs and board members for large healthcare lobbying groups and companies such as Comcast. Under my administration, the DNC will no longer accept corporate money. And in addition to fixing how the national parties raise money, we need to stop the influence of corporations. We need to stop the influence that corporations have on individual candidates running for office. He says the FEC no longer acts like an enforcement agency and needs to be replaced to effectively regulate campaign finance. So as president, Bernie said that he will pass a constitutional amendment that makes clear that money is not speech and corporations are not people. By doing so, we will overturn the Supreme Court ruling that says money is speech, Buckley versus Vallejo. I actually covered that the other day. Pass legislation to end super PACs, political spending by 501c4s and other organizations who accept unlimited contributions. There's a problem with that. We'll explain in a second. Overturn Citizens United, which allows corporations to spend unlimited money on elections. Abolish the worthless FEC. Funny enough, he says he wants to abolish it and introduce a law enforcement agency originally proposed by John McCain. It's pretty cool. End the influence of corporations at the DNC by banning donations from federal lobbyists and corporations. Institute a lifetime lobbying ban for national party chairs and co-chairs. and ban chairs and co-chairs from working for entities with federal contracts that are seeking government approval for projects and mergers and can reasonably be expected to have business before Congress in the future. So anybody with massive conflict of interest. Pass mandatory public financing laws for all federal elections. The FEC will determine the appropriate threshold candidates must meet in order to qualify for public elections or for public financing. A new system of universal small dollar vouchers will begin. Wow. Okay. That's a pretty big deal. I missed that part when I was initially reading this. He also says that he will ban advertising during presidential primary debates. I don't know if he can do that for both the Republican and the Democratic primary debates, unless you're doing it on a public network. He says he will also institute a lifetime lobbying ban for former members of Congress and senior staffers. So, did he take some heed to the criticism lobbed against him in 2012? It seems like a good mixture of mostly yes, a little no. First of all, he said that he does want to ban nonprofits now, but only the 501c4s that raise unlimited amounts of quote unquote dark money. In 2012, they criticized him for not including nonprofits, in their totality in his amendment. Now he's including nonprofits, but only the 501c4s who can, raise unlimited amounts of money. Unfortunately, so he did heed part of that warning. However, he did not clarify that unions are not people, because if you know anything about unions, as pro-labor as I am, once again, the elites of the unions can be easily persuaded one way or the other, and will spend money one way or the other, based on whatever whatever candidate is going to benefit a few people of the union rather than the union in its entirety. So he doesn't address that aspect of the complaint lobbed in 2012. However, I will concede that banning 501c4s from contributing at such a ridiculous rate to political parties, political candidates, whatever, is an absolute win and is a huge stride towards what I would hope to be an eventual ban on 501c3s contributing, and what I would hope to see as a complete and total transformation into 100% publicly financed elections. And I'm going to explain to you all why 501c4s absolutely must be banned from political spending. I see we have 2 super chats. Mr. Orochi, have I seen Pac-Man and Anna's recent Tulsi videos? I have not seen Anna's recent Tulsi videos because her voice irritates me, and I feel like she just says the same things over and over again. I haven't seen Pac-Man's because Pac-Man is Pac-Man, and he is just the worst. Like, I've been hearing that he's basically full on endorsed Warren now. So like, there's that. I think that everybody would agree that Pac-Man is a neoliberal. I feel like he's not even trying to be progressive anymore. He's horrid on foreign policy. He's not even good at analyzing the Democratic primary objectively anymore. I honestly don't even know why people like Sam Cedar and Michael Brooks are better than David Pac-Man, and that's saying something because Sam puts me to sleep. G, thanks for the super chat. Would you support Bern Liz if he had won and chose her? Nope. I would not. Because the reality of the situation is Bernie is 78 years old. The reality of the situation is I have learned from history. Now, granted, FDR was sick and not necessarily old. I think he died at 64 years old, so that's relatively young. But Bernie is 78 years old. and the presidency ages you quicker than what you would expect. God forbid anything happened to Bernie where he doesn't even have to pass away. It doesn't even have to be him passing away. It could literally just be him getting tired and physically and mentally and emotionally exhausted from the presidency 2-3 years in. And then Elizabeth Warren takes over. And then what? Then the Democrats lose. Progressives lose because she's not going to push Bernie's policies. She's going to push the policies of the corporate Democrats. If you hear all the plans that Bernie wants to see implemented, who is the most likely person to take up the mantle should Bernie only do 4 years or quit halfway through for whatever reason? Tulsi's the only person who would make sure that Bernie's dream is fully realized, not Warren. Not to mention, we would be setting up Warren for almost a walk-off victory come the next primary. Because what happens is, if Warren was VP and Bernie, for whatever reason, only did 1 term, then, and he, and Bernie kind of removes himself from the quote-unquote Democratic Party leadership as president, then the natural progression would be Warren would be in charge of the Democratic Party. So all the rules that Bernie put in place specifically for the Democrats would be off the table. Now Warren's in charge. Warren's going to do what the hell her masters tell her to do because she's more concerned with her career than anything. And it would be setting us up for a longer, like it would almost be like resetting the revolution that Bernie started if we allowed him to get in office with Elizabeth Warren. Do you really want Elizabeth Warren as the person sitting in the Senate negotiating on behalf of progressives, on behalf of Bernie Sanders and the legislation that he's going to introduce? No, nobody wants that. So, out of the presidential candidates that I would be okay with, I would be okay with Tulsi. I would also be okay with Marianne Williamson. I would actually be okay with Marianne Williamson. I would also be okay with Yang to a degree, because Yang was a staunch Bernie supporter in 2016. And so I actually like UBI. I really do. And so I think that quote unquote marriage, if you will, between Bernie and Yang could be great for UBI in the long run. And if something happened to Bernie, I think that, yeah, there could be some for example, Yang is bad on foreign policy, but he's not that much worse than Bernie. So like, it's kind of like, if I'm gonna get Bernie on foreign policy anyway, then Yang being there is not gonna really kill me, unfortunately. But of course, the number one person, in my humble opinion, is Tulsi. If you were gonna have somebody outside of that, though, it would be Nina. Like, if you're saying it can't be a presidential candidate, who you think it should be? Nina, 100%. So, because I know Nina, once again, like Tulsi, will fight for Bernie's dream, at least on domestic policy. And I also know that Nina will consult the right people before making decisions on foreign policy, which is why, if you pay close attention, you see that Nina on Twitter doesn't seem to be moving to the same beat as the rest of the campaign when it comes to things like celebrating Warren, getting involved in certain foreign policy conversations that are a little murky. Nina is very judicious in how she spends her time, spends her energy, and very judicious as to what she gives her attention to. And if she doesn't think it'll benefit the movement, then she'll handle it behind closed doors, learn, educate herself, and consult with the right people to generate what she believes is the correct solution. It's one of her strengths, is waiting patiently and then, making a decision. So what I ultimately hope to see is the first female combination of president and vice president, where 2024, 2028, we get Tulsi and Nina running for office as running mates out the gate. Like, if Tulsi announced with Nina out the gate hey, I'm running for president, Nina's running for vice president. Let's get it. Bruh. Unstoppable. Unstoppable. And you know what they say? You got to win Ohio. You got to win Ohio to win the general election. Well, that former senator from Ohio, although she didn't win her race because she couldn't campaign, really, Nina has that pull in Cleveland. Nina does have that pull in major cities in Ohio. And that should not be ignored. So that's what I would like to see ultimately. But no, I can't. I would have to. It would definitely be a circumstantial thing. I would have to weigh it as the situation progressed. But as of right now, if Bernie picked Warren, even though she's been a compulsive, pathological liar, even though she wouldn't show him the respect that he's shown her in 2016, even though she had the opportunity to run, she said no because she was scared of Hillary, whereas Bernie bravely stuck up for him, and challenged Hillary, stuck up for Warren and challenged Hillary. It's just very hard for me to, because at that point, I would have to believe that Bernie has been almost completely co-opted. Because it wouldn't just be that one decision in a vacuum. It would be the decision to back, it would be the decision to back certain narratives, to combine with the decision to for example, defend the DNC when it came to the debates. He was asked to speak up for Tulsi, but he instead ended up defending the DNC. The decision to bring people like Ro Khanna on to his, as a chairperson, co-chair of his campaign. There's a lot of reasons, but in a vacuum, it might not be that big of a deal. But when you combine it with all of the other things that we've seen come into play, that's where things get murky. So I want to go ahead and continue about this article regarding Bernie's plan, I should say. So it's a huge step for Bernie, even though incomplete, by the standards set by Move to Amend. It's still a huge step forward to disallow 501c4s from having the type of influence that they've had in the past over elections. For example, Hillary Clinton Victory Fund. Yeah, I know a lot of y'all remember that. They raised $61 million in a joint fundraising effort with the super PACs, with that particular super PAC, with 33 Democratic state committees and the DNC itself. Remember, we broke that story. Well, if you're new here, you might not know that, but we broke that story March of 2016. I broke it right in Jared and Elizabeth Lee Beck's office. Tried to get TYT to cover it back then. They didn't want to do it. They said there wasn't a smoking gun, despite the fact that I had all the FEC documents laid out for them. But the Hillary Clinton Victory Fund was a 501, or is a 501c4. What they did by quote unquote joint fundraising for Hillary Clinton, the Democratic National Committee, and the state Democratic parties was that they were basically allowing money to be laundered and bribing to take place. Because of course, if you were not going to be a state Democratic Party who participated in helping to fundraise for the Hillary Clinton Victory Fund, then you were not going to benefit from any of the funds for the Hillary Clinton Victory Fund. If you were not going to be the candidate that played ball with the Hillary Clinton Victory Fund in the Democratic primary, then of course you were not going to benefit from the Hillary Clinton Victory Fund's fundraising. But not only that, you would also not benefit from the Democratic Party, the Democratic National Committee's fundraising. Also, you could, even though you would be fundraising through corporations tangentially, you would not be fundraising through them directly. Because if you donate to the Hillary Clinton Victory Fund, if you're a major corporation who can donate as much as you want to, and you happen to give some money to the Democratic Party of that particular state, then if that party spends that money on that particular candidate, the waters get too muddied and there are too many steps in between, so that it would be extremely difficult for you to directly connect the money that candidate received through their state Democratic Party and directly track it back to the corporate money donated to the Hillary Clinton Victory Fund, which, by the way, was the goal. That's how money laundering works. So that's one example of the Hillary Clinton of a nonprofit, a 501c4, taking advantage of dark money. Priorities USA, another pro-Clinton super PAC. They brought in $25 million between July and September of 2015, bruh. 2015. And they spent that money to the benefit of one candidate and one candidate alone. And what did Donna Brazile say about the Democratic Party? Why did they accept all this money from the Hillary Clinton Victory Fund, from Priorities USA, both 501c4s, which Bernie's plan wants to eliminate? Why did they accept that money? Because, well, why did they work to the benefit of Hillary over anybody else, including Bernie? Because Donna Brazile was very clear. We needed someone who could raise us the money because we were flat broke. So basically, it was made clear from the onset that we're going to help the candidate that can make us not broke and keep financing our lavish salaries. That's how, so between the Hillary Clinton Victory Fund and Priorities USA, just those two combined, by the way, that's not even the complete and total number that Priorities USA raised that entire year. I need to be clear about that. But just from the numbers that I gave you today, $60 million from Hillary Clinton Victory Fund, $25 million from Priorities USA, that's $85 million spent on one candidate from two PACs. Do you still feel equally represented, people? Do you still feel like you have a legitimate influence as an individual over your elections as long as these 501c4s are still in place? Absolutely not. Of course you don't. Jack Smith, thanks for the super chat. Sending love. Ro Khanna, why does Bernie keep him divisive as man? Because Ro is he's useful in the House of Representatives. And I do truly believe that Ro was picked only because Tulsi had already announced she was running. I believe that the original plan was Tulsi Gabbard was going to be one chair. His co-chair was going to be Nina Turner, because they're really good at working in tandem, and you get Nina on the domestic, you get Tulsi on the foreign side. And if you've noticed, Bernie is partial towards having women at influential positions, specifically women of color, than he is at having men in influential positions. Unless we're just advocating for him outside of that influential bubble. Like, no offense to either Nina or Tulsi, but they're not going to push Bernie one way forcibly, one way or another forcibly. Like, it's just not a thing. Bernie's kind of hard-headed like that. And there's a lot of reasons why, that whole situation is a whole different discussion. But that just kind of like, I'm trying to help you all understand that he would be more likely to pick a woman. He would obviously be more likely to pick Tulsi. Ro is way too close to Hillary, I'm sure, for Bernie's liking. But because Ro has been such a good ally for Bernie's bill specifically in the House, the only other person that would have been a good co-chair to deal with the foreign policy side, at least in Bernie's mind, I imagine, would be Ro Khanna, because otherwise, who else do you have with experience? So he was kind of left with Ro. But I do believe that was more like, okay, if Tulsi's running for office, I guess I can have Ro. I don't think that was a conscious decision to put Ro over Tulsi. There was something else. Oh, the actual move to amend bill itself, I wanted to talk about. The move to amend bill or resolution, I should say, HR 48. This is the part I'm a little bit confused about with Bernie. So he did introduce that amendment, of course, in 2012. Like I said, it was a joint resolution to amend the Constitution to take big money out of politics. And it was, however, it was lacking addressing unions and nonprofit corporations. In case you did not know, there has been another joint resolution introduced. And it was pushed and sponsored by the Move to Amend movement. I strongly urge you to go to their website. They have a lot of great articles, and they've been in this game for quite some time, fighting to get big money out of politics. This resolution was introduced February 22nd, 2019. It was introduced with Jayapal, Tulsi Gabbard, and Ro Khanna, amongst a lot of other people that y'all don't know. In addition to that, it has 64 co-sponsors in the House. So this isn't just, some fringe bill that only the progressives in the House of Representatives are backing. This bill has 65 co-sponsors and it was co-introduced by three of the most quote unquote prominent progressives right now, three of the most notable progressives as far as name recognition is concerned. Also, and as we've figured out, unfortunately, because of the way presidential elections and politics work out, everything that Tulsi does, Jayapal is not going to necessarily vibe with. Everything that Jayapal does, Tulsi may not necessarily vibe with. Everything Ro does, or everything Tulsi or Jayapal might do, Ro might not necessarily vibe with. That's just the nature of the beast when it comes to the presidential elections. But the fact that Ro, Tulsi Gabbard, and Jayapal all introduced this legislation in 2019, in February, after the elections kicked off, lets you know that this is an important issue that many progressives all see eye to eye on, if not all progressives. So here's what this resolution says. Once again, this is House Resolution, in case you are curious. It's HJ Res 48. Proposing an amendment to the Constitution of the United States providing the rights extended by the Constitution are rights of natural persons only. Resolved by the Senate and the House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled, 2/3 of each house concurring within, that the following article is proposed as an amendment to the Constitution of the United States, which shall be valid to all intents and purposes as part of the Constitution when ratified by the three legislators of 3/4 of the, by three legislatures, when ratified by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states within 7 years after the date of the submission for ratification. The articles read as such. Section 1, the rights protected by the Constitution of the United States are the rights of natural persons only. Artificial entities, such as corporations, limited liability companies, and other entities established by the laws of any state, the United States or foreign state, shall have no rights under this Constitution and are subject to regulation by the people through federal, state, and or local law. The privileges of artificial entities shall be determined by the people through federal, state, and local law and shall not be construed to be inherent or inalienable. I love it. Section 2. Federal, state, and local government shall regulate, limit, or prohibit contributions and expenditures, including a candidate's own contributions and expenditures, to ensure that all citizens, regardless of their economic status, have access to the political process, and that no person gains as a result of a person's money substantially more access or ability to influence in any way the election of any candidate for public office or any ballot measure. That's extremely important. The ballot, you have no idea how many ballot measures have been introduced in several states where these 501c4s will spend an incredible amount of money to try and trump them, just like Medicare for All in California. Federal, state, and local governments shall require that any permissible contributions and expenditures be publicly disclosed. In other words, that kills the 501c4. The judiciary shall not construe the spending of money to influence elections to be speech under the First Amendment. Section 3, and this is the final section, nothing contained in this amendment shall be construed to abridge freedom of the press. So that's a pretty damn comprehensive resolution. It is a joint resolution. However, and this is a question that I've been trying to get answered for quite some time. I consulted with the Move to Amend. They have not gotten a clear answer. I've asked people on Bernie's campaign. They have not gotten a clear answer. But for whatever reason, although Bernie has introduced this plan, Bernie has not introduced the Senate version of HJ 48, which would be the official Move to Amend bill. As of yesterday, the leader of the one of the leaders of the Move to Amend movement did post something on Twitter. Matter of fact, let me see if I can read that to you all. And I'm going to try and get somebody on from the Move to Amend movement to come onto the show, by the way. See if I can find it. Okay. So this is by Caitlin Sapoki Belknap. You can find her on Twitter at Caitlin, Kaitlin _SB. Once again, she is the national director for the Move to Amend movement. She said, gotta say, definitely didn't see it coming that Sanders would pull a typical politician move and jump in front of Move to Amend instead of being a partner with the grassroots movement who paved the way for everything he proposes here. It's cool. So, mind you, the Move to Amend movement has been trying to work with Bernie in a similar way that nurses unions have, for example. And although Bernie has embraced the nurses unions, or the nurses union, he's not been that kind. Apparently, this is just based off of what I'm reading and the conversations I've had with the Move to Amend people, with the members of Move to Amend. Like I said, I'm curious. I want to have them on so we can figure out why that is. So I think it is definitely worth mentioning that for whatever reason, Bernie did introduce his plan, but he didn't introduce the resolution that's already because I think that his plan and what his plan calls for meshes really well with this joint resolution that Kana, Jayapal, and Tulsi Gabbard introduced in the House. That resolution was of course sponsored and crafted by Move to Amend. Comprehensively, it does exactly what Move to Amend hopes to achieve. So at that point, I do wonder if there is a reason. I would love to hear Bernie's reason why he wouldn't introduce that resolution in the Senate. Because if you introduce it in the Senate in February, when it's like the Bezos Act. What made the Bezos Act so powerful? The fact that Ro Khanna and Bernie introduced both of those bills at the same time. So it got attention. It got national attention because of that. Two bills being introduced at once is a big deal. Then you have the Yemen bill. Why did the Yemen bill get so much attention? Whereas in the past, the situation with Yemen basically didn't get discussed because you had the joint bill introduced by Ro Khanna and Tulsi Gabbard and Bernie's bill. So it garnered oh wow, this is a big deal if both the House and the Senate are introducing it. Even when it comes to Medicare for all, why is it that in 2017 when Bernie introduces Medicare for all legislation didn't get as talked about? And people don't know that. Why is it that when Conyers introduced his bill in 2016, didn't get talked about? Literally, as Bernie is running, basically, he introduced the bill. While Bernie was talking about universal and single-payer health care, and Conyers' bill did not get widely discussed. But in 2019, Bernie introduces, Jayapal introduces her version of the bill. Bernie introduces a similar, although not exact, but similar version of that bill at the same time. And so all of a sudden it becomes a national conversation. So history has shown us that if you want to create a national conversation through the legislature, the House, your allies in the House and your allies in the Senate need to work jointly to get things done and to move the country left. So I would love to see Bernie introduce. Now, in his defense, though, it almost wouldn't be wise to do that at this very moment. Now he has to wait because there are strict laws preventing your campaign policy team, your presidential policy team, from working with your legislature policy team. So now he has to wait. But I would like to see him introduce a joint resolution, the heir apparent to the move to amend bill, because the biggest complaint that I've seen from them so far is they love this plan, by the way, but the biggest complaint that I've seen is that his bill does not go out of it still offers too much protection for unions, not the people in the unions, but remember, unions, like a lot of other nonprofits, like, for example, working families parties, they are oftentimes ran by a couple of elites, unfortunately. These are the facts. Unfortunate facts, but facts nonetheless. And so like that's, and also it doesn't clearly draw enough of a line as far as corporations benefiting from free speech, not only in political elections, but just in general. It doesn't establish laws that say, hey, Bernie's plan doesn't, hey, you have to, you have no inherent rights here, whether it be politics or otherwise. You will be governed and regulated by the people, nobody else. So that's good. So basically, if we combine Bernie's very detailed plan with what has already been introduced in the House, you have an absolutely fantastic resolution, an absolutely fantastic amendment that I think 90% of Americans would love. This, I want to make my last point in this, and then we're going to move on. Have you all thought about something, though? As much as I dislike a lot of positions that Cenk has, a lot of things that he has said over the last 6 or 7 months, Cenk said something that I've actually heard other progressives who are not fans of TYT talk about. They say that Bernie, for whatever reason, hasn't talked enough about big money in politics. This is they all, of course, he doesn't take he doesn't take corporate donations, but they say he doesn't talk enough about it anymore. Whereas that was a pillar in his campaign in 2016. He talks about like corporations, funding the debates and things like that. But like this plan hadn't been introduced. Bernie signed on to TYT's pledge and getting big money out of politics. I can't remember if it was part of it. I feel like it was. I feel like TYT's pledge, which thankfully faded into the dark, did talk about getting big money out of politics. But Cenk said at that point that Bernie hadn't been talking about it as much as he used to. And it was a fair criticism, I guess. And as of late, a lot more people have been feeling that way. So moved to amend since 2012 felt like Bernie hadn't been going far enough when it came to getting big money out of politics. And also Yang with his small dollar vouchers that he talked about during the debates. Remember that? He talked about that during the debates, bruh. Remember that. So that was Yang's idea. I'm not saying that it was like, he's the first person to ever come up with it, but it was his idea. He popularized it. If we're going to be real. So when you take the combination of Bernie incorporating part of Yang's idea, Bernie incorporating maybe not entirely, but a lot of move to amends platform, Bernie hearing and heeding people saying, yo, Medicare for all is great, but if we don't take care of corporate lobbyists, it's not going to work. If we don't take care of corporate lobbyists, it's not going to work. If we don't get, over and over and over again, we've been saying this. And so Bernie clearly listens is the point of my story. Stop treating Bernie like a deity and stop treating him like an infant. Bernie is running for president. This plan is further proof that Bernie listens, and if you push him left, if you push him in one direction, he will move in that direction. He's a little hard-headed than most sometimes, which is a good thing when it's a good thing, and it's a bad thing when it's a bad thing. But he can be moved. However, Bernie has also made it very clear that if you do not push him left, if you do try and insulate him, if you do not hold him accountable, he will ignore your ass and continue to do what he does. People made it very clear, in my opinion, from the onset that Jeff Weaver, although Bernie may not like him, we don't really like Jeff. We're a little skeptical about Jeff. Jeff seemed like a bit of a careerist. We love Nina, though. And eventually, Nina, after a lot of push, not only internally but externally, Nina became a chairwoman of our revolution. Nina, campaign co-chair. We made it clear that we want more independent influences on Bernie's campaign. Bree Joy Gray, national press secretary, who also endorsed and campaigned for Jill Stein in 2016. David Sirota, same thing. Although David Sirota has been pissing me off with this Warren rhetoric, he is still, I would consider, an independent journalist who leans a little bit more liberal than I might. So Bernie does listen. So this whole idea that if you insulate him, it's protecting his interests and thereby protecting your interests, you were wrong. Because really the only issues that y'all want to insulate him from, outside of maybe Medicare for all, are issues that don't affect you at all. Like, you're okay with, for example, Julian Assange suffering and Bernie not saying anything about it because you're not suffering. You're okay with Bernie messing up when it comes to his rhetoric on Venezuela, accepting right-wing framing on Venezuelan rhetoric, because you don't live in Venezuela. You're not affected by those sanctions, nor will you be overthrown by it would not be made possible to overthrow you because of manufactured consent. So you don't care. Like, Bernie, people think that Bernie's like the absolute best on Israel and Palestine, and he's not. He gets the most blatant things right, but just in 2017, even after 2016 and people were pushing him left, he signed that letter along with Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz and all the Republican senators to disallow the United Nations from participating in BDS in any way, form, or fashion. Basically a letter threatening them. So like, he isn't the best on that, and yet people keep saying, oh, he's the best on it though. But he's not. So like, there are things that Bernie is great at, and there are things that Bernie is the best at. There are some things that he's not. And this plan, when you break it down, is a clear example of how when you talk enough, when you push him enough, if you say some things that are a good idea, he listens. He listens. He may not listen 100%. Hey, I'm pragmatic. I'm all about compromise. All about compromise. So just because he doesn't listen to me 100%, if you listen to me 95%, I'm cool with that. We'll hammer out the details later, but I'm cool with that. So, Next topic that I'm sure a lot of you are super excited about. Super duper excited about. Well, I gotta find it. Boy, Trump been on Twitter wilding, by the way. Somebody need to take his phone away. I don't think I missed any super chats. Did I miss any super chats before I move on to this next topic? Come on, where you at? Where you at? Where you at? There we go. Matter of fact, let me see if I can. No, I can't bring it up. So, I didn't miss any super chats, right? Okay, cool. So, for our next topic of discussion. I'm only laughing, by the way, so I can stop from crying. Because our next topic of discussion is from the Breaking News Live Twitter, who is pretty accurate, actually. Breaking News Live has been pretty accurate. They say that Hillary Clinton is thinking about running for president in 2020, according to multiple sources. Yeah. You read that correctly, or you heard that correctly. I read it correctly. Hillary Clinton thinking about running for president in 2020, according to multiple sources. So, of course, my statement responding to that was, so the next time the Democrats pretend like they genuinely want to get Trump out of office, remember this headline. This was tweeted out yesterday, 2:55 p.m., October 7, 2019. Yeah. This isn't a joke. And once again, I've said this. And once again, you got to look at patterns, people. I said in 2016, after Bernie lost or had the election stolen from him, he was like constantly in the spotlight. 2017 came around, constantly in the spotlight, traveling around the country, going to West Virginia, standing up for Disney workers, standing up for Amazon workers. I was like, oh, he's running again. That's why. Tulsi went to Standing Rock. Tulsi went on Joe Rogan, and it kind of came out of nowhere. Tulsi was introducing a lot of bills. And I was like, and she was starting to come under attack by the mainstream more than she had ever been, after being, once again, considered the anointed one. And I said, Tulsi's running. Whenever Kamala kept having her face all over Twitter, YouTube, she went from having like 300,000 subscribers to like 1 million subscribers out of nowhere. I was like, this is an AstroTurf candidate. Then I found out, of course, her sister had worked for Hillary Clinton, and you know, her election prior to that had been a little sketchy. I think her election as Attorney General had been sketchy. I was like, she's being pushed into the spotlight because she's running for office. Cory Booker, he killed his candidacy before he even began by voting against Bernie's big pharma legislation. But it was obvious. If you saw Cory Booker's behavior after the election, man had so many Facebook videos that he had never had before. Just grandstanding. It was obvious. So, given all the patterns that we've seen in the past, right, that turned out to lead to this same conclusion, what do you think it might look like if Hillary Clinton wanted to run for president? I don't know. Maybe you go on a book tour. Maybe you go on a speaking tour. Maybe you go on a tour where you talk about how Donald Trump should be impeached and you start using campaign talking points. You climb back into the spotlight. Right, by the way, right as the top candidate, quote unquote, Joe Biden, is fading into the background. I'm just saying, peeps, when you come into the spotlight, you're not coming into the spotlight just to sell a book. Because if it was just to sell the book, that's like, she did that already with one book. She did that at the beginning of 2017. Then she went on a speaking tour that did abysmally. Now she's advertising another book. It's because she wants that Oval Office. Is she thinking about it? Absolutely. Is she still thinking about it? 100%. To be completely honest with you, if you're going to be real, Hillary Clinton re-entering the race could seal the end. It could seal the fate of Bernie Sanders' campaign. And it's a big deal. I know people want to laugh at it. Yeah, it's funny because we know she would lose to Trump. We know that. But it needs to be understood. Bernie's biggest strength is his also, coincidentally or ironically, his biggest problem. His biggest strength is the fact that the establishment's pool is diluted. It's diluted amongst Biden, Warren, Buttigieg, and Kamala, depending on how long she stays in the race. However, those are all different versions of Hillary Clinton. If you ever seen Spider-Man Enter the Spider-Verse, that's basically what it's like. They're all different versions of Hillary Clinton. Some might be a little bit younger. Some might be male. Some might be gay. Some might be old. But they're basically different variations of Hillary. Here's the problem, though. If you combine, like, if Hillary enters, Buttigieg is stepping down. If Hillary enters, Warren might stay up until maybe the New York primary, perhaps the California primary. Warren would stay long enough to siphon votes from Bernie in the huge early primary states that Bernie needs to win to get the 50% going into the national convention. Then she would step down because she's told to. Because they will offer her, because Warren's not an idiot. Warren knew that they cheated last time. That's why she didn't run. And if the party elite say Hillary's about to win, so you can play ball and be vice president, just like they threw at her last time, or you can continue to run, be a wedge within the party elites, and you'll never be president. Your career is done. Because all of a sudden, the favorable coverage she's getting will disappear the moment that Hillary Clinton enters the race. Think about it. So all of a sudden, you have a consolidation of power, a consolidation of resources, and to be quite frank, a consolidation of cheating. Because I don't have one camp or one county precinct or one county party trying to cheat for Warren, while the other county party might be trying to cheat for Biden, while the other county party might be trying to cheat for Kamala, while the other county party might be trying to cheat for Buttigieg. They all will get their orders from one woman's campaign and one woman's campaign alone. That would be Hillary Clinton. And they all will obey those orders. They will. Because Hillary Clinton, despite being utterly abysmal when it comes to actually connecting to voters. She can fundraise for these people like no other. But I mean, she kind of burns through she burned through $1 billion, right? So the money doesn't last very long, but the money provides jobs and temporary opportunity for the party elites. And that's what they're more concerned about, the short-term gain rather than the long-term, as always. Hillary Clinton entering this race is bruh. You have to remember the entire context. It's not a laughing matter. It's only funny because it's sad. Because it isn't, once again, it would severely hurt Bernie. Not because he doesn't have the numbers, but because he doesn't have that type of pull. He had the numbers. I was there. Doesn't matter when you have somebody like Hillary Clinton and you've already endorsed her. Kind of hard to come at somebody substantively when you've already endorsed them. Because now people have already normalized her in their minds. On top of that, you don't really want to address election fraud. The election fraud that's been done by the Democrats. So, and you don't want to address election fraud, and election integrity. The things that Bernie would need to address in order to beat Hillary, he has made very clear he's not going to address them. And that's not good for him. So would he flip the switch on her? Possibly. We could get a savage Bernie if Hillary Clinton decided to run, because he's probably going to be like, oh, word? Oh, so this is what we're going to do. So after I did my job, I kept up my end of the bargain. I fulfilled my contract and endorsed you before the convention, by the way. Even after I did everything I was supposed to do, you are still coming here to try and steal this election. Maybe that would be the breaking point for Bernie, for him to just be like, hell nah, I'm tearing her apart. Maybe. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? But also, it should be understood that there's a possibility that Hillary Clinton is running, because I've been telling people, this investigation into Joe Biden, into Biden's son, was started a year and some change ago, people. It was reignited because the old administration would not cooperate, because the old administration was a product of the Clintons. It was reignited when the new administration took over, because Zelensky is supposed to be more of a populist candidate. He's an actor. He literally played a president on television and ran for president. This is the world we live in now. Accept it. This is the world we live in now. But this new administration, however, was playing ball. They were cooperating, as much as they could, because this is an ongoing investigation. So the investigation started before anybody even knew Biden was running for president. In fact, back then, even myself, because he was actually trying to stay out of the spotlight, I thought, wow, maybe he really isn't going to run. So Biden wasn't even his political opponent. If I'm being honest. So to say that this is a politically driven investigation, I can't say that there are no politics involved. That would be silly and naive. But it isn't a political investigation in the sense that he was trying, like Trump isn't that intelligent, that he would try and preempt Biden running for office by entrenching his campaign in this Ukrainian scandal. Especially, once again, complete context. Simultaneously, adjacent to this, was Paul Manafort in his Ukrainian scandal. So, if anything, unraveling the Ukrainian scandal like he has could have came back to bite him in the ass. with Paul Manafort being tied into it as well. So just saying. On top of that, I also broke the news that Hillary Clinton's email investigation had not been concluded, that she should be worried because it's about to be concluded. There was an article that was just released about it not even a week ago. And it turns out that there was not as much of a unanimous decision to close out her email scandal case as people thought there was. For example, the top lawyer in the FBI, Comey's #1 legal liaison, said very clearly, actually, Hillary Clinton should have been prosecuted. In his mind, was not changed until the very, very end of the investigation. So Hillary Clinton can still be held accountable for her email scandal, and because she's connected to so basically an oligarch from the Ukraine, and I wish I could remember his name. I wish I would have wrote it down. I'm sorry. But the oligarch from the Ukraine, he certainly used to serve in the Ukrainian parliament, who also is a billionaire, donated several millions over the course of tens of millions of dollars over the course of a few years to the Clinton Foundation. Obviously, this is all taking place while Hillary Clinton was in charge of the Department of State. Then this oligarch also sat on the board of the Atlantic Council. The Atlantic Council was partnered with the energy company that Hunter Biden sat on. So all of this connects, of course, not only back to Hillary, but to everybody, and even Nancy Pelosi, I'd imagine. Which is why she's like, okay, I gotta say something now. I'm gonna get screwed. Why do you think there's all this frantic, oh man, we gotta impeach. We're having more discussions about whether or not Trump should be impeached than we are having discussions about the clear corruption that we saw take place under the Obama administration. Explain. I don't understand. Explain this to me. Why are we talking more about an impeachment where a prosecution is not likely at all? We're talking more about that than the corruption of an administration, where a person from that administration is literally running for president and has shown no remorse for his actions while vice president. Just saying. So this is not once again, it's not laughing matter. It's not small potatoes. Hillary running for office is a big ass deal, and we should not pretend that it's not. If she decides to announce, unless Bernie goes full savage mode, that's probably one of the only scenarios where I would say maybe we need to, as a Tulsi supporter, maybe we need to bite the bullet. Or, dare I say, I know I'm going to take a lot of heat from Bernie supporters, maybe Bernie should get his movement behind Tulsi, because we know that Tulsi, we know how she feels about the Clintons, because she looked the camera straight in the lens and said, the Clintons don't scare me, when asked about them. We know that she'll challenge election integrity. She has the legislation already out, which is one of the reasons that Clinton has been able to succeed, was because of a lack of election integrity. So maybe it would be time for Bernie to get behind Tulsi. But either way, I do think that one of them at that point, maybe if it gets consolidated, like if it comes down to maybe, for example, they have 3 candidates left for whatever reason, like the establishment does, and we have Bernie, Yang, Tulsi, then one of them, between Bernie, Yang, and Tulsi, should concede at whatever point during the race they want to concede, because we need them to put their support behind one of the other two, so that they can rack up delegates in states and areas and then give those to the person who makes the convention. If we all split those delegates, the progressives might not have any delegates at all to give away at the convention to get whoever over the 50% hump. But if you get so for example, if Hillary is the only one that's running, at that point, you still need two people. You still need two people because Hillary does have the resources to beat anybody, but she does not have the resources, however, to be somebody who has a movement, one, and somebody who has a conviction to stand up to her and call her out, two. And then, once again, take those delegates and hand them to whoever is at the convention. That would be the way to do it, in my humble opinion. Yeah. So we have one more topic left. This is something that y'all gonna love. This is something y'all gonna love. This is a fun topic. A new poll just dropped, y'all. A new poll just dropped, and looks like we're about to start redefining who is and is not a top tier candidate. Let's check it out. In this new Wisconsin Democratic primary poll, Warren's at 23%. Unfortunately, that is a bigger deal than I would have liked it to be, to keep it real with you. And I'll explain why in a second. Sanders is at 17%. That's a bigger deal than what it is too, but for good reasons. Biden is at 9%. Uh-oh. And hold on. What does that say? That say Tulsi Gabbard at 6%? Let me rub my eyes real quick. Y'all know I got long eyelashes. Sometimes my eyelashes, they get into my eyes and it makes my vision a little bit blurry. And sometimes I could mix up potentially Tulsi Gabbard and Kamala Harris's name. I remember she told me that she's a top tier candidate. And so when the eyelashes get in my eyes, I confuse Tulsi and Kamala's names at times. So I just want to make sure that I'm not crazy, because when I check this, yeah, that's what it says. It says that Tulsi Gabbard is top 4 in Wisconsin, while, by the way, Yang, number 4%, that's great. Buttigieg, 5%. Literally nothing has changed with Buttigieg. This man is at the same 5 or 6% that he has always had. You almost get to a point you feel bad for him. But Harris at 2%. This is a huge deal, people, for a lot of different reasons. So let's first break down why this is a big deal just in general. This entire poll should be, people should pay close attention to this poll. So there were 12,080, or I see we got super chats before I get started. Kamala, top tier candidate. Ha! I see what you did right there. Thanks for the super chat, Rinston. Jack Smith, thanks for the super chat. Niko, thanks for your honesty and analysis. Hey, I greatly appreciate that. David Harris, go Tulsi, keep up the good work, Niko. Thanks for the love, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Y'all have been awesome today. So 1,280 people were asked all the questions in this particular poll. It was a poll conducted by changeresearch.org. However, there was still a huge number of people asked specifically about voting in the Democratic primary. 1,009 people said that they were going to vote in the Democratic primary out of that 1,280. So what does that mean? So out of the 1,280, That's a 2.7% margin of error. You know, taking away 200 people, it might have went up to 3.5, 3.6%. Either way, it's a pretty damn good margin of error. And guess why it's an even better margin of error, and why it's even more important that we pay attention to this poll. Wisconsin is an open primary state, people. It is an open primary state that is an absolute must win if you are going to beat Trump in 2020. If you are going to galvanize, it is going to be representative of a Democratic candidate's ability to galvanize a base to not only win back the White House, but win back various legislatures and governorships all over the country. So this says, basically, so for Tulsi, this is a huge deal because out of that huge sample size, Tulsi is a top 4 candidate with less name recognition and less coverage in a state she has barely campaigned in, if she's even campaigned at all. Top 4. Let me be very clear about something. Obviously, I'm close enough to the campaign that I can tell you where they've been campaigning at and where they're spending the most time at. I don't think they've spent any time or money in Wisconsin. I don't think that they've phone banked in Wisconsin. I don't think that they've canvassed in Wisconsin. I don't think that they've put up a billboard, ran an ad in Wisconsin. Tulsi wasn't even in the last debate, people. She wasn't even in the last debate. Kamala was. Buttigieg was and was praised a lot for it. Castro even. Hell, even Yang. Yang did a great job in that last debate, by the way. But yet and still, Tulsi is in 4th place in an open primary state. So then the question becomes, well, one, how is she 4th place? Well, how many times have I said over and over and over again, I said, y'all keep playing, but there are 37 either open or semi-open primary states. The majority of those will have a direct effect on the outcome of this election. Some are so late and they have such, so few delegates that they won't matter all that much. Wisconsin is not one of those states. I've said that you have 2 candidates, really 3. If you include Andrew Yang, you have 3 candidates who could potentially just obliterate the establishment in any of the open and semi-open primary states. Obliterate them. And you have a lot of semi-open primary states where they're only Trump is already, he's winning. He's going to win the Republican nomination, obviously. So they don't really have anybody else to vote for unless they're like that, unless they have a lot of Republicans primarying each other, which is generally, from what I've seen, not the case. Like, it's just not the case usually, unless the Republicans have a new promised corporate funded candidate that they want to use to beat out somebody else who hasn't been playing ball. So if I'm in a semi-open primary state, I'm probably more concerned about who's going to run the White House, because I'm going to be able to vote in the general election no matter what. And I don't have an option to vote for, so maybe I decide to vote for either Tulsi Gabbard or Bernie Sanders or Andrew Yang. Or hell, even Marianne Williamson in some cases in the more liberal states. With 1,000 people being asked, in Tulsi, 6%, Yang, 4%, Bernie, 17%, what that shows me is that what we have been saying will happen is probably going to happen. the quote unquote outsiders will absolutely dominate open primary states. And at the very bare minimum, where they do not win with a decisive victory, the delegates will be split amongst them in such a way that the establishment will not be able to cull together enough votes to have a quote unquote decisive victory. And once again, as long as the progressives in the race, the outsiders in the race, decide to bring those votes together in the first round of voting at the Democratic National Convention, we're good. So, Warren is in first place. She is in first place, and it should not be ignored. However, it also shouldn't be ignored that she's also being pushed by the media in a disgusting fashion. That should also not be ignored. But the only reason she is in first place is because she leads amongst the 50 to 64-year-olds. She leads there, which is kind of crazy because she's beating Biden in that category. Bernie, however, is leading amongst the 18 to 34-year-olds. And I imagine that because Yang primarily campaigns on social media and obviously is on the younger side, and Tulsi primarily campaigns on social media and is on the younger side, that Tulsi and Yang are maybe taking some votes away from Bernie. But even with them taking votes away from Bernie, for Bernie to still be in second place is huge, especially by winning that younger group. And like we've said, there are a lot of people, for whatever reason, if Biden drops out, their next vote, they said, is for Bernie. That's the next in line for them. Inexplicable. Don't get it. Don't really care to. But that's the way it's going to work. So if Biden drops out, I do believe that Warren has stolen some of the votes from Biden because of Biden's gaffes. Because he's just not. It's Biden, right? I'm trying not to insult the man's mental state, but Lord Jesus, he makes it very, 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 very hard. However, she has taken some of his establishment votes or voters. That's fine. Don't really care. It's the question. And I think it also should be said, she's taken a hell of a lot of Kamala's voters. I think that we can all agree with that, right? Kamala's voters probably largely went to Warren. And the reason I say that is because Warren leading in the polls, just like when Biden led in the polls, just like when Kamala was top 3, interchangeably between Bernie and Biden. Like she would sometimes she'd be number 2, sometimes she would be 3. Most of the time she'd be 3, but she was still top 3. The reason that she was top 3, the same reason that Warren is not number 1, and the same reason that Biden was number 1. It's the media attention she's getting. But it's still far too early. Like in that context, when it comes to media attention, it is far too early for us to believe that a first place candidate in a poll in an open primary state is going to remain there for that long. Because the media bias shifts based off of who they believes is the quote unquote most electable at the time. So if you are polling in a particular area at 27% or 21% or whatever it is, if you're polling in a particular area, especially when most of your results are coming from positive feedback from 50 to 64. Oh, what a coincidence. Was the dominant demographic of CNN and MSNBC 50 or 60 really and above. So basically their viewership skews older. They're hearing your name more than anyone else, but no one is really dead set in the person they're going to vote for. But they're hearing your name more than anybody. Does that mean they necessarily like you more than everybody else? Does it necessarily mean that they like your policies more than anybody else. It's like, it's probably more along the lines of, we thought we liked Biden, but we don't like him anymore. We thought we liked Kamala, but we don't really like him anymore. I hear Elizabeth Warren's name now. They seem to think she's pretty cool. Yeah, I guess Elizabeth Warren works. And that's basically how it went. Because once again, that's how the polls have been fluctuating. Whoever gets the positive media attention at that time ends up in the top 3. Biden is hurt. He needs to quit. That's all I got to say about that for Biden. Harris. This is the fun part. Ha, 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 ha. And this may not be, what did she say? What was the word she used? I wish I could remember the word she used. She said, this may not be modest or whatever. I can't remember the word but she said, this may not be modest, but I'm a top tier candidate. Okay. And it was clear that a lot of people were trying to take me down because I'm a top tier candidate. Yeah, too bad, because you're not anymore. Whoop! Yeah. Tulsi took that ass out. Bethlehem Tesfaye, thank you very much for your input, and thank you very much for the super chat. I appreciate it, Beth. By the way, I just now realized you have the same last name as The Weeknd. Just random. I was like, where have I seen that last name before? But anyway, who's also of African descent. I think he's half Ethiopian, half Nigerian, if I recall. Anyway, so Tulsi took Kamala all the way out. Tulsi, and I said this before, the moment that you had that anchor dressed up damn near in the same exact outfit as Tulsi, asking her very similar questions to what Tulsi asked. When previously to Tulsi exposing Kamala, Kamala's record was off limits. It was off limits. You were not allowed to discuss her record. And then all of a sudden, what happened? Well, I mean, she's done now, right? So we can use this for ratings. Okay. Hey, Kamala, come here real quick. I gotta talk to you. So she got torched the first time by Tulsi. Got torched again by the moderator. Has not recovered since. And now she's at 2%. But this is a bigger problem than just the Democratic primary. Like I just explained to you all, this is an open primary state where Republicans and conservatives will be voting. Not only the Democratic primary, but in the general election as well. When you've gotten as much positive media attention as Kamala has, when you have spent as much money as Kamala has, when you have, quote unquote, the amount of experience that Kamala has on her team anyway, even though it is losing experience. Not all political experience is good experience, people. When you have that much going in your favor as a Hampton's chosen one, people. She was the Hamptons chosen one. And you're at 2% in an open primary state in a poll that had a 2.7% margin of error. Oh, bruh. You got to go. You guys, like, y'all know I'm not really a Democrat, but if you are a Democrat and you do want to win this election and you do want to, take over the legislature and take over the Senate and get those governorships back, like, you better tell Kamala to drop out. Because if, for whatever reason, they anoint that woman, she is going to get obliterated by Trump in the Rust Belt. Obliterated. That's what will happen to her. At the end of the day, political elections and polls are not a monolith. They're not like monolithic in how you have to analyze them. Sometimes they demonstrate. You can learn things about the past. You can learn things about the future, and obviously you can learn things about the present. When you're talking about a poll with over 1,000 people asked, with a margin of error of 2.7%. In an open primary state where Republicans and Democrats participated and independents participated, where you had the 18 to 34-year-olds participating and the 50 to 64-year-olds participating. When you've gotten, for the most part, positive coverage generally, when you've been insulated for the most part by the establishment, when you've been funded for the most part by the establishment, when your damn sister worked for the queen of the establishment, you've had every single opportunity and advantage, and you're at 2% in an open primary state. You will get destroyed by Trump. Not only in Wisconsin, by the way, but Wisconsin is pretty representative of Ohio, Michigan, the Rust Belt, somewhat Illinois. That means you're going to get beat in all those states. It's time for you to go. Gotta go. Gotta get her out. Get her out yesterday. But hey, people, I will tell you this. You better be humble. You never know when you could go from being the next top tier candidate to 2% in an open primary state in a poll that has a 2.7% margin of error, which is a fantastic margin of error, by the way. You never know. So be humble. Sit down. Bruh, at this rate, Kamala might lose California. I think Yang is beating her in California. Hey, remember that party that Kamala's people did on Twitter? Oh, yeah, Tulsi didn't make the debates. Tulsi didn't make the debates. Tulsi didn't make the debates. Oh, so Tulsi didn't make the debates, but yet a poll that was released last night, she's still ahead of you in a state she hasn't even campaigned in. Oh. At that point, if I'm Tulsi's campaign, I'm celebrating. You're right, I didn't make the debates, and I'm still beating you. Ugh. Jesus. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for this segment, this live stream segment of Mikasa Sukasa. If you missed any of the other segments, don't worry about it. I'll be posting them up various times throughout the day today. Have a huge story later where a former delegate from California was physically assaulted and her protector was actually arrested. Whereas the person who assaulted her was a white guy assaulting a Mexican woman, so you know how that worked out. He's still home free. But yeah, so that's going to be, I'm live streaming that later today, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. So check that out too. Keep an eye out. Like I said, make sure you go to rockfin.com to subscribe to that channel. They're dropping their app soon, so it's already being tested in the iOS store. So Apple's testing it to make sure it's smooth and all that good stuff. And after that, within the next week or so, it should be there. And their live streaming is pretty smooth. And go to Q Bounty. If you have a super chat and you did not get to ask me, but you want me to do a video for it, go to qbounty.com, QBOUNTI.com. So I'm going to put both of those in the description. Here you go, rockfin.com/Niko. QBounty.com. Boom, put it right there. All right, we good? Hope y'all enjoyed the show. All right. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for tuning into that live stream segment of Mikasa Sukasa. And always remember, more than anything else, people, find your balance. Peace. Hey, don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you like that segment of Mikasa Sukasa. Also, you can help us upgrade the studio and take this show on the road to cover the on-the-ground politics that you love by clicking on that GoFundMe link in the description and donating literally anything. Anything helps. Also, you can follow us on Rockfin, on Twitter, and on Facebook as well. And hey, more than anything else, people, always remember, find your balance. Peace.